accept her evidence of identification as reliable, as, on the face of it, no explanation appears reasonable to us. Now, as I say, Your Lordships, if your attention is invited to the case of Dillon, we'll see that the quotation from Bennett contained...
You're watching the Lockerbie appeal from Cam Zeist on BBC World. Now we know who's going to be in the final. Here's more with Francis.
Stephen, thank you. Yes, we're talking about the Australian Open tennis in Melbourne. And we know defending champion Jennifer Capriati will play Martina Hingis in Saturday's final of the women's singles, a repeat of last year's final, and the result of two thrilling semi-finals. First up, the match between Hingis and Monica Seles, chasing her first Grand Slam appearance in a Grand Slam final appearance for 6 years. Indeed, a determined Seles, the number 8 seed, took the first set, but thereafter Hingis fought back and took control. Hingis winning the second 6-1, then came out on top 6-4 in the third to reach the Australian Open final for the 6th year running. In the second semi-final, Jennifer Capriati raced into a 4-1 first set lead, only for Belgium's Kim Clijsters to level it at 4-all, before the defending champion edged ahead 7-5, but Clijsters would not give in. She took the second set 6-3, only for Capriati to re-establish her authority, dropping just one game in the final set and setting up a potentially thrilling final against Hingis. Now some football news in El Salvador through to the finals of the Gold Cup after a 1-0 victory over Guatemala in Pasadena, California. And South Korea, one of the guest teams in this CONCACAF organised competition, clinched their place in the last 8 following a goalless draw with Cuba. South Korea go through at the expense of the Cubans because they scored 1 goal in the tournament, whereas Cuba failed to score. South Korea had the best chances to break the deadlock in this match, but squandered numerous chances, which doesn't bode well for their World Cup campaign when they co-host the tournament with Japan later this year. So this is how they line up for the quarterfinals at the Gold Cup, beginning with Costa Rica against Haiti on Friday. The following day, defending champions Canada play Martinique, with Mexico against South Korea, and the United States against El Salvador on Sunday. Action at the African Cup of Nations resumes later today, with the host nation Mali back in action against the tournament's joint favourites, who are Nigeria. Well, Mali drew their opening match with Liberia, while the Nigerians know that avoiding defeat would virtually assure them of a quarter-final place after beating Algeria 1-0 last weekend. Today's other match comes from Group B, with both South Africa and Ghana seeking their first win of the tournament after both drew their opening matches 0-0. Now to the NBA, where defending champions the Los Angeles Lakers suffered a 5-point defeat away to their crosstown rivals the Clippers. And in a night of lopsided results, the New York Knicks ended their 8-game losing streak, beating the Toronto Raptors, and the Minnesota Timberwolves, who've barely put a foot wrong this season, came totally unstuck when they visited the Detroit Pistons.
The Minnesota Timberwolves, one of just 3 teams to have chalked up 30 wins in the NBA so far this season, came up against a determined Detroit Pistons side. The Pistons have as many defeats as they have victories, but playing at home they stamped their authority on this matchup early on. Jerry Stackhouse hustled well at both ends of the floor and managed to convert his hard work into points. Other notable performances included Clifford Robinson and John Barry. Barry's passing in the second quarter led to easy baskets for teammates. Midway through that period, the Pistons' running style was paying off and their lead ballooned to 14 points. The Timberwolves tried everything to stop them, but the luck of the roll just seemed to be on Detroit's side. Chauncey Billups stepped up for Minnesota in the third quarter to try and limit the damage and make up some of the points deficit. But Stackhouse was having an especially good night. His 40-point performance was what essentially separated these two teams. At this point, with just under 3 minutes left in the third quarter, it looked as if Detroit were cruising towards a crushing victory. But Kevin Garnett pulled off some great plays, and with 3.5 minutes left, a comeback wasn't inconceivable. Detroit managed to hold on though, Stackhouse finishing in style. The final score: Pistons 104, Timberwolves 83. Phil Sheehan, BBC News.
And that's all the sports news we have for now, Stephen.
Good job the Pistons didn't lose, otherwise they would have been disappointed. All right, let's move on to the top story. The American captured fighting the Taliban has come back to America in chains. From me, Stephen Cole, that's all for the moment.
Hello there, welcome to World Weather. In Australia we still have some heavier showers pushing their way into the coast of Queensland and one or two even getting as far south of Sydney. But for Victoria it's looking bright and fine as it is through much of New Zealand during the day on Friday, although there are still a few spots of rain and drizzle in between the North and South Islands. For Perth though, it's looking like another couple of fine and sunny days with temperatures getting up to around 32 Celsius. Now let's head a little further westwards to see what's happening on with our main story, which is of course the Cyclone Dina, which is affecting La Reunion Island the worst at the moment. It is still to the east of Madagascar, giving some heavy winds and heavy rains as well, and that is moving a little further southwards still and weakening all the while, but we will of course keep you up to date with the progress of this cyclone. Heading across to Asia, this area of low pressure here really does develop over the next few days, and that's going to take some more unsettled weather from eastern China right the way across into Japan. So although there's some brighter weather here on Friday, it isn't long before that rain does move across on Saturday. As I said, from eastern China, that rain spreading right the way across into Korea as well as southern Japan. For Canada, there's more snow on the way if you're in Labrador, already adding to the heavy snowfalls we've had here in the last week or so. Certainly some more in the south on Friday and Thursday, but by Friday that snow becoming a little more extensive. For Vancouver though, it's another mild few days, temperatures typically staying at around 5 degrees Celsius. Now there's been some heavy rain in the United States. Certainly Knoxville has had its fair share, 91 millimetres in the last 24 hours, and that batch of rain is continuing to move its way up to the north of Washington, but then there's more moving in behind, stretching up from Texas right the way up to Illinois, so some more heavy downpours to come if you're in this area. The temperatures are also going to be affected. Some warmer air pushes its way certainly in across Denver, so there will be a bit of milder air to come here, but further west it gets much colder from Denver right the way across into Sierra Nevada. So we will feel that milder air in Denver certainly on Friday, but things, as I said, getting colder further west. For South America, we still see some heavy rain to the north of Buenos Aires. Bye-bye.
Picture the countries that occupy a whole continent. Make all the pieces fit. In Europe Direct, next on BBC World.